How is art going for you? What have you been up to? Tell me good things.
I'm doing well. I have shifted the focus of my art to watches. I
Yeah.
am doing G-Shock, Casio G-Shock customizations. I'm painting images on the dials, and I'm changing some of the hardware out for, different colors and
Uh-huh.
that kind of thing. So
I like it. Some customization. Is getting really into
it's
watches kind of
fun.
like getting really into cars?
Yeah. Yeah, the communities cross over. So,
It seems like fun.
mhm,
I've
makes
been
sense.
well, I finished the Dune painting finally. It's done.
Okay.
And
I
I'm
like it. I
I
like what I've seen of it. So,
yeah, I got to get my fancy photos of it up. I got to get them taken
okay.
first and then I got to put them up, but soon you'll see it and I think it looks good and I'm stoked. I'm so excited.
Nice.
Are you the
Right.
kind of person that works on more than one painting at a time, or are you like,
I wish I was. I
mm-hmm.
need to be, but I'm not at this point. I'm working on it. But like my stuff tends to be like extremely detailed, so it's hard for me to focus like that. It would probably be better for my brain actually if I could like switch to a different piece and not have to worry about that other piece for a few minutes, just kind of
Honestly?
change gears. And I've done that a couple times. I did that early on. I did a couple paintings at the same time. Sometimes it makes it longer. It just depends. I'm coming up with like a system where I kind of divide the paintings up into like quadrants. And so I'll be like,
Oh,
okay, like this 2 or 3 days, I'm going to finish this part of the painting. And I do that on each painting. So it's like quadrant one on all three paintings and then just kind of work my way through.
that's a good
Um,
system.
yeah.
Yeah, I
So
like
that's
it.
kind of what I'm working towards. But yeah, it's
Nice.
tough.
Yeah, it is tough. I'm not good at working on more than one painting at a time. I like lose
Hmm.
focus and then like several times I've done this. I just have like piles of color on my palette that are for one painting and then I'm like, oh, why do I still have these? I scrape them off, I put them in my extra paint painting and then they're gone. And then I have to like 2 weeks later I'll go back to the other painting and I have to like remix the colors and it's never the same and I'm just like kicking myself. I'm like, why am I like this? Arts problems. I did just spend $500 upgrading my studio, and I have new desks right now, right
Oh
in front of
man.
me, and they're so great. I got two that match, so it looks like one giant desk, and I'm like, ha, more surfaces to work on.
Dream is to put a Murphy bed in this room and then I'll just have so much room for activities, but that's not going to happen.
Murphy beds are surprisingly
The Murphy,
expensive.
well, that and I'm in an apartment. I can't do it. Like I don't
Oh
own the
yeah,
place.
yeah. Then you're forced to organize, and you're like, now I need a storage unit
I
and a
know,
Murphy
right?
bed.
Where am I going to put all the crap that's underneath there?
Help.
That's my hiding spot.
Yeah, yeah. I think my will to live is constantly enforced by how much I love upgrading my life and like making my spaces better. It's like the earth sign in me. I'm
Right.
like, it's like as long as there's
No, I'm with
something to
you.
fix, chef's kiss. It's perfect.
Yeah.
So, the next stack is the pile under the table that we talked about last time on our book club.
Okay.
I gotta
Right.
organize it because I pulled something out after we talked about student art, and you were like, you should sell it. And I was like, yeah, I should. So I pulled something out, and I had ruined it by putting too many things on top of it. And so now I'm going to cut it up and use
Oh.
it for like a collage or something. But I
Okay.
was like, oh, whoops.
Okay.
Turns out the weight of art on top of other art is not good for the first art. Classic. Classic.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, you could get like one of those wire shelving units
Yeah.
and put that in so that you could stack paintings and stuff on.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part is like drying racks are so expensive, like ridiculously, prohibitively expensive.
And if you get a cheap one,
Um,
they like bend. They're not good. They like
yeah,
dissolve.
yeah.
It's the worst.
It doesn't make any sense. And like flat files, that's a crime.
Oh my
Like
gosh.
those people, that's freaking highway robbery.
It's like a
Those
grand
people
for
are
five
evil. I
drawers.
can't believe they would do that.
It's so silly.
If you're lucky,
Yeah.
if you're lucky, rare, rare birds
Rare
these
birds.
days.
So good. Yeah. Well, I like
Mhm.
that you're doing watches now. That's fun and very cool.
Me too. Me too.
Get some more funky
And I have
paintings.
loved watching your stuff change up from
Oh yeah.
your residency. Like
Yes.
it's so good. Like you just kind of like put it in overdrive, and I love it.
I'm going to keep exploring it. One of my goals for 2025 is to make a collection of 5 to 10 pieces of like bigger pieces in that style,
Okay.
in the scattered pattern
Yeah.
style. So
Right.
I'm excited to explore it and to see what happens and hopefully get it in a show. Who knows?
Do it, do it, do it.
We're going to
They're
try.
fabulous. I love them.
Yeah. I have decided to take December off from making podcast episodes. So there will be only a
Okay.
couple more for November, but none for December. And I'm going to use that time to kickstart this new project. And
Okay.
I'm pretty stoked. I think it's going to be good. Friends and foes, welcome to Brushwork Podcast. My name is Stephanie Scott, and today is Art Book Club with Jennifer, Visual Nomad, here on Twitch. We're doing a live podcast recording here on Twitch, talking about Working Girl on selling art and selling sex. Some content warnings for this episode. We are going to be talking about sex work and selling art. It's in the title of the book, and it's a major theme of this book. So if you don't like that, or you have little listening ears around you, maybe come back to this later. I feel like, though, before I start talking about this book, I need to talk about my own sexuality for a minute and like kind of give a foundation of from where we're coming from. I am demisexual and I'm pansexual. So I don't feel sexual attraction very often, almost never. But when I do, it's for anyone, and that's where I'm coming from. So reading this book was like a kind of an interesting experience for me as my like relationship with sex is, I feel like, is quite different from a lot of people on the planet. I
Okay.
I think I've been attracted to maybe 4 people over the course of my 34 years of life, and it comes after knowing them for a long time. Like, it's weird. And
Okay.
thinking about sex work is like, wow, this seems like an excruciating, difficult job to me. And I think it is, but I'm also like, wow. Like, even considering doing this kind of work seems really intense. Yeah. Yeah, that's where I'm coming from.
I'm demisexual and sapiosexual. I also err on the side of bisexualism.
That's where we're coming from. So take that from as our point of view as we discuss this book. This book
Yeah.
is more about selling sex than it is selling art, I think. When I read this book, I was like,
Oh yeah.
we're like really diving into the sex trade and very, very infrequently going back into selling art. And I think the delicate balance of Sophia's life and her experience is also in this of where is the line between selling art and selling sex. And that's like the major topic of this book. This book has 5 major parts. It goes on meaning, on fantasy, on violation, and on legibility. And then it goes back to on meaning as a part 2. And it's short and sweet. It's like 150 pages or so. It's pretty punchy and it's quite sophisticated for its topic, I think. Like,
Yeah.
it really
Yeah.
goes kind of academic in a way. Yeah.
Right.
Did you like it?
Yeah, and I did. This was a fantastic book. Like I really enjoyed this book.
Agree.
It might be my favorite book that we've read so far.
Really? Wait,
Yeah.
tell me more
Yeah.
right now.
Well, I think it's interesting how she points out the intellectual dishonesty that our society kind of has baked into it when it comes to sex work and artwork.
Mm-hmm.
She's like they're extremely similar. She talks about the fact that she has met clients at openings.
Mm-hmm.
They've had her come with them to openings, and she's also found people at her own openings when she's done art installations and stuff. And just how that's kind of intertwined. The people they're similar. They're the same people that run in both groups a lot of times.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to see how she progresses over time. I think she said she started when she was like 19-ish,
Yeah, that seems right.
18 or 19. And she's probably 36, 37 now, I think, is what she said. She was born in 92.
So
So,
at least a decade of
um,
work by the time of publication.
yeah, it's really interesting to see how, like, not understanding she was when she first came into it. Like, she came into it with her heart on her sleeve. She approached it from a very emotional standpoint, even though it was something that was for survival. Like, it was her job. It's a job like any other job. She has kind of found her way through that wilderness, which is really hard to do, I'm sure, of drawing a line with clients that try to overstep,
Yes.
clients that don't respect her. And that is physically shown in the fact that they don't pay her. They don't want to pay her. They try to not pay her.
Like constantly.
So they don't respect, yeah, as they don't respect her as a human. And that would just be like if you walked into Wendy's and somebody gave you a burger and you're like, oh, that's nice. Thank you. I'm glad that, you did such a good job doing this. And then they just like walk out.
Oh gosh.
It's like, no, they would
Mm-hmm.
call the cops on you and arrest you for stealing,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But, and it's funny because in this world, they are people that are uber wealthy. Like the people that she is working with, she works in New York City. And I know some of the places that she is like meeting people because she says where she's
Mm-hmm.
met them and stuff. And I've been in those areas and it's like Billionaires Row. She's on the Upper East Side, the Upper West Side. That's where all the money is. Like all those people are at least millionaires, if not more. And so it's like money is not an object for them. And she knows that. And she's going to make them pay for her time
Yeah.
because her time is valuable.
Mm-hmm.
She does this so that she can open up more time to do her art. That's the only reason why she got into this, because she tried to work in offices, she tried to work in retail, she worked a bunch of different places, and every time she goes and tries to find another job, it just feels like I'm doing a lot of work and not getting paid for it.
Yes.
And she has her sex work to juxtapose with it, and she goes, I know my time is more valuable than that. Like
Mm-hmm.
I literally can show you that I can make in an hour what most people make in a month, you know? And
Wow.
so yeah, it's fascinating to see that world.
It's amazing. She starts this book by kind of talking about when she needs money, she goes to the system she knows of how to make the most money the quickest, and that's through sex work. And to her, that it's so much easier than having the office job. Like it's easier on her psyche than the office job. It's the same feeling she has when she's making art. Like when she's doing her
Okay.
office kind of work, she talks about how it's so draining on her mind and on her energy, and how she goes back to this in a later chapter, how she can't separate the feeling of being at work and the rest of her life. Like it's too woven
Right.
together, and that
Right.
it feels when she does her sex work, it feels so similar to doing the artwork. And they're different in their presentation, but they are so similar in so many ways that they're essentially the same thing. And
Right.
she also talks about how, I think this is a great theme in the book, is how calling her sex work artwork at the very beginning when she first started getting into this was helping her shave off the shame of doing sex work,
Sure.
and
Sure.
how it took her many years, like the whole decade, in order to be like, no, this is just part of how I live my life. And
Right.
it's 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 interesting how the topic of just work itself comes up over and over in this, of how it's I don't know about you, but I feel like sometimes I take the idea of I'm working all the time, I'm working on my artwork all the time, and trying to separate my life from when I'm relaxing versus work, and having that the work life balance happen. And
Right.
she argues that there is no such thing as work life balance. In fact, it's all just you living. And
Right. Right.
and that's interesting, and I liked that point, and I was like, oh,
Sure.
maybe I should focus less on how many days do I have off, and more like, is the thing that I'm doing for work, like her work gives her energy and her work gives her
Yeah.
liveliness, and it makes her excited to see her partner, and it makes her excited to work on her videos or her this book or whichever it is. And I'm like,
Yeah.
changing that mindset from, oh, I'm doing all this work and maybe it's not super fun, maybe it's like admin stuff or like networking, and but
Yeah.
it does give you the opportunity to do fun things, to bring your artwork into life, whereas when she was doing her office work, that was absolutely not the case. And it's, I don't know, it's just a fascinating thing
Right.
to think about. Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought it was really insightful how she had hitched capitalism to the cart of sex work and artwork.
Totally.
How like it's a natural, it's an organic thing that comes from capitalism. It makes perfect sense why it happens. And it's funny because she's like, people are shocked when you talk about it, but they know it goes on. It's not anything new that they don't know.
Right.
But they act like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Like, this is so shocking. It's like, come on.
One of my favorite
Like,
quotes in the book,
yeah.
it's on page 144, and it says, if you think you don't know anyone who has ever sold sex, you are almost certainly mistaken. And I think the shock and the like
Yeah.
the shame of it
Yeah.
is like really fascinating. Like,
Oh,
I,
yeah.
yeah.
It's so intriguing that, again, that we're so intellectually dishonest with ourselves in these situations. Like, why we've stigmatized this work. And one, how dangerous it's made it for all the parties involved. She tells a story about a, a person that works in a massage parlor,
Hmm.
and I think it was the FBI or something came and
Oh yeah.
raided the massage parlor. Well, this person jumped out the window 4 stories so that they wouldn't get caught because I don't know if they were an illegal or if they were afraid, even if they weren't, that, they were going to try to deport them or whatever. And they were just there to make money and send money back to their family and take care of themselves. And when you come over, that is one of the easiest jobs that you can get.
Hmm.
And that's why a lot of them go into that. And they view it very differently than we do. And so to them, it's not a big deal because to them, being a sex worker involves having sex. And they don't feel like that, like what they're doing is not technically having sex. And so they don't see it as a big deal. But this person was so afraid, they jumped out the window 4 stories and died needlessly
It's tragic.
because they were afraid of what's going to happen, and a lot of times when they raid these places, it's not the person that hired them that gets incarcerated. It's actually the worker that gets incarcerated. And how, especially if you are a person of color, when you get arrested, you are 10 times more likely to be criminalized than you would if you were a white person. She speaks on her own, behalf of her experience being a white woman and having that happen, and how she's had to kind of look out for the people that she works with,
Hmm.
because sometimes she'll work with another worker depending on, what the clients are asking for. And sometimes she has to look out for them because if they get caught, she's not the one that's going to get like harmed. They will probably just let her go
Yeah.
because they see her as an escort, not a prostitute. But if she was a person of color, they would see her as a prostitute. And what the difference of those terms mean to people. Like, you're an escort, that means you're classy. Like, there's an air of civility about that. But if you're a prostitute, it's like, no, you're gutter trash. And there's this image that's perpetuated in our society of, you know, the the drug doing strung out leopard print high heels on the side of the road image, and that's not the case a lot of the times. There are people that do it that way, but there are far more people that don't, that are discreet about it. And like she says, if you think that you've never met somebody that hasn't done this, you're crazy,
Right?
because it's around you more than you think it is.
The boundaries around the terms and the reputation that's been intentionally created around some of these terms is, centuries long. I recently read a book called The Mistress of Paris, and it was by the same person who wrote the Rosa Bonheur biography. And it
Okay.
was
Right,
about
right, right.
one of the great courtesans who started out as like the lowest ranking prostitute that you could find in Paris in the 18 whatevers. And how
Okay.
this person was like, it's my brand image to make myself a courtesan and to work my way up and like continue to amplify that idea of a courtesan being an elegant and very valuable member of society. And to think about how this has shifted and changed, and now with online
Mm.
platforms like OnlyFans and
Yeah.
websites where where it's like how you present yourself changes, how well you can actually do your job, but also how other people think about you. And it's interesting. Towards the end of the book, she talks about how the phrase "sex work is work" has normalized things and like has done
Mm.
good there, but also it's swung around and is not doing good. I don't know if I fully understood what I was
Right.
reading there, but it's I think it is good to normalize this, and it's good to talk about this and have conversations like this
Mhm.
here on Twitch. How fun! But
Right.
it's dangerous in so many ways. There's a lot of fear. There's a
Mm.
lot of just desperation, and it's a lot of shame. And then
Yeah.
you bring this background towards selling art, and it's
Mm.
the same sort of reputation building and the same sort of like vagueness and selling that sex work seems to have from her
Yeah.
stories. Yeah. There's a quote on page 109 that I really liked that I'm going to read. It starts out with, "The whore is a woman, the artist is a man, and neither, until the 1970s, is a worker." And how it has
Mm.
the ideas of the starving artist is doing art just because they love it, or they're rich enough just to do it because they want to do it, and nobody is getting paid.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's it's still glamorized, the starving artist. I feel like it's less so now, at least in my circles, but I meet people who are just like, no, the creativity is the only thing that matters and the art doesn't, and whatever. And it's a weird paradox.
It's good that you've pointed that out, because yeah, it's like i- again, it's so funny. I'm gonna turn my camera off for a second because I am gonna pull up the book.
Okay, I really liked this book.
Okay, so talking about the starving artist,
Mhm.
critic William Deresiewicz
Yeah.
writes, a tradition as traditional beliefs broke down across the 18th and 19th centuries, art inherited the role of faith. As with art, so with artists, the new priests and prophets. It was modernity that gave us the bohemian, the starving artist, and the solitary genius, images respectfully of bliss, blissful, unconventionally monkish devotion and spiritual election. Artistic poverty was seen as glamorous, an outward sign of inner purity.
Right?
And I think that I still think that that's perpetuated, Steph, like
Yeah,
even in our groups. Like, because people will question, how devoted are you to your art? Like, are
totally.
you just like, damn the man, I don't care if I have to eat ramen for the rest of my life and blah blah blah. Like, at what point do we take that sainthood off of these artists and allow them just to be people, and
Just,
what does that look like,
yeah.
you know
When I hear that, I think about ego, and I think about how, the feeling of, oh, I'm a better artist because I am doing it selflessly, and I'm, getting salutations from the gods or whatever to make certain things, and my work is never to be sold, and it's kept pure, and it just feels like I don't know. I hear it and I feel like I'm like, this is nonsense, but also it's like it's like people are like true believers about it.
Queer theorist Yasmin Nair discusses the demand for authentication through trauma that permeates current discourse on consent and rape culture, as well as larger critiques of patriarchy, capitalism, and immigration. You cannot speak about capitalism as a person of color if you are not willing to talk about yourself as a trauma subject. So she's talking about they automatically try to make a person of color a victim when it comes to sex work. They either think they're being sex trafficked or that they're a prostitute
Right.
and that it's a bad thing, like they're forced into it.
Right.
She elaborates there's a kind of demand for authenticity in all of this that I find particularly vexing. And I know for a fact that many people who have a critique of trauma and of violence and of the state may well have been abused, but also don't talk about it. And does that make them less authentic? Their generation uses that as a sign of authenticity. And if you
Yeah.
don't, does that make you less authentic?
The
Which
theme
I
of
think is ridiculous.
the theme of using authenticity to sell is very
Right.
real, and also it's like, where are your own boundaries in that, right? When are you using your past stories and your past, you know, traumatic experiences or not, or happy experiences, whatever they are, and using that to further your own monetary gains is something I feel like that is what artists do. They take whatever
Right.
story that they have in their life and their emotions, and they're turning it into creativity, and that's a beautiful part about what artists do. But also then it's like, okay, now I'm selling that trauma and I'm selling that thing, or I'm showing it to everybody, and maybe that in itself is traumatic itself. It's conflicting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She talks about how I think it's museums. They didn't want to buy it from her because they would have to pay too much. There was a charity auction.
They had all these works by famous and infamous people and they were like, this is a charity auction, so they put out all this work, and it was supposed to be at a discounted rate so that the proceeds would go to these wonderful charities. But then museum buyers would just buy these works at a discount and rip off the artists without paying full price for it. And it feels like the same way that a lot of Sophia's clients would try to treat her sex work. It's
Yeah. Yeah, she's constantly juxtapositioning or comparing these two jobs
mm-hmm.
to each other and how similar they are. How it's subjective how people view what you do, like the value of what you do, and how she's constantly fighting to prove her value
Mm-hmm.
to her customer.
Mm-hmm.
To some extent, at some points, she'll just be like, sorry, I'm not doing this without you paying me this amount.
No.
This is the price. Like the price
Right.
is the price.
Right.
Um,
It does inspire me to be
and
more firm about selling my own art at prices that I initially
mhm,
do and have less discounts. So, there's that. There's value.
yeah. And that's kind of how, like, kind of what I saw in it too was
Mm-hmm.
like, why shouldn't I be a bit perturbed actually that somebody would want to get my work at a discounted value if they actually value what I'm doing?
Right.
Like, do I want that person to be a patron of mine? Do I want to perpetuate that in this world of art for other artists, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Whenever I get someone who's asking for a discount on my work, I usually offer up payment plans for the same price. I'm like, we can spread this over a couple of months if you like, but
Yeah, yeah,
this
yeah.
is the price. And
Yeah. The
mm-hmm.
Whitney suffered another scandal in 2020 when the public outcry forced the museum to cancel the show Collective
I
Actions.
remember that.
Artist interventions in a time of change. Yep. Presented as a showcase of artists' response to Black Lives Matter, uprising and COVID. And that's the one where they took the money,
From the
where
charity auction.
the artists donated the pieces knowing that they would get a less amount, and they took advantage of it. And you see that opinion like that it's pervasive through all the stories she starts telling. You see that pervasiveness of that story, how it's been continually churned up and reaffirmed in capitalism. And she's like, there's no other outcome that capitalism has than that, because it's about commodification.
Totally.
If we are commodifying a female body in the work that they do, like, it's natural. It's like breathing. Like, that's what's going to come of it, you know? It's very enlightening, because it's not only from her working life perspective, it's from an artist perspective as well.
Totally.
Like, she's a fairly well-known artist. She shows in New York City, and yeah, it's, you know, she runs into it a lot, and she talks about how she has to deal with it and how she does deal with it. People that try to get around it, you know?
Right. A topic that comes up fairly often for me in life, which is interesting because I don't make art about figures, I make art about shapes, is that where is the boundary between what is art and what is pornography? Right? Okay, so here's a quote. "The stakes of the context here are dire." This is page 127. "A nude photo and in a gallery is art, but in the wrong hands and on the wrong app is evidence of prostitution." So, like,
Right.
I find, and this comes up sometimes on my Discords, this comes up sometimes when I'm just talking to artists, is like, at what point does art stay as art, and what point is it, you know, sale for sex? Like, at what point, where is that boundary? And I think it really does matter on what platform it's at. But oftentimes I will see on, like, say I'll be on Instagram or something, or meeting a new artist, and they're like, this is my art, and it's all photographs of women in sex acts, and you're like, is this art or is this porn? Like, where is this? And like, what does this feel like to me, and like, how is it being sold to me? Do you have any thoughts on that?
The first thing that comes to mind is, does that matter?
I think it matters in
does
its
it really
reputation.
matter if it's either or, you know? I think both people think of it as art, you know. I think the worker thinks of what they do as art, be it, you know, if they're doing photography or video,
Right.
and the artist thinks of what they do as art,
Right.
so it's art.
But what about the buyer?
To me, it doesn't matter, but that's a personal thing.
Right. To me, it also matters less, but I see this coming up a lot, and I see where it's like, okay, like, at what point is something too explicit for Instagram because it's not art, it's porn, right? And like, at what point does the artist get censored and not be able to reach her audience because she makes nude figures? And at what point does the buyer who was potentially interested in a piece of art gets told, oh, it's pornography actually, and doesn't buy it, or vice versa? Like at what point is it art when it's in a frame on a wall? Is it art? How is it, like, when it's on OnlyFans?
What makes it pornography?
What makes it pornography?
Not pornography?
And I think it's the intent of the person making the content, or the people, I guess, making the content. It's the people handling the camera and in the lens. But it's yeah, then we've talked about...
I would say it's the person that's in it. It's like, how do they want to be known?
Right.
How do what do they want this to be received as? I think that's the biggest thing. It's like, what is your intent? If it's pornography, then we need to put it over in this side. It's not wrong or right, but we need to be able to categorize it so that we know where to place it. But if you claim that it's art and that was your intent, then it needs to be art. It needs to be able to be put on Instagram and everything else, you know?
Yeah. Censorship's interesting. We've read a couple books on censorship now, and when it comes to art, and I feel like we don't want reputation around a piece to matter a lot, but it does matter a lot. And I feel like I don't want censorship to be such a giant issue that it is right now, but it is. And like, purity isms, and just, it's so easy to be snobbish, and it's so easy to see that and be offended, and then it's so easy to like want to make something cool and share it with somebody, and then being told, no, this is wrong because it's showing a boob. Like,
Yeah.
It's complex. It's complex.
And I think it's funny. What was it? Like maybe 2 years ago on
Hmm.
Twitch, there was this whole thing about nipples,
Oh yeah.
like whether they could be shown or not shown for people that were doing art. And it's like everybody has them.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like, why is this so shocking? Everybody has them.
Everybody has them.
And we're, here's my take on it.
Yeah.
I think people are being very childish and being very two-faced about it when they say it, because in one breath they will sit there and act like they're shocked and chagrined at this whole concept of, oh my gosh, you're nude. This is nude art. But on the second breath, they'll pay somebody to do work for them.
Right.
You know, like how shocked are you really? Like,
Right.
I don't think you're as shocked as you're making out to be. And that may be like trying to save face. That's fine. Like, I get that. But don't fool yourself into thinking that you're in a different place with it than any. 9 times out of 10, anybody that I talk to usually comes down on the same end of things. They're not shocked by it. Like, they're just not. Like, yeah, of course it exists. Like, yeah, like we're adults.
It
Like, what's the big
it exists.
freaking deal? You know?
I feel like there's also the sense of moral righteousness and punishment that gets put on
Yeah.
something that's labeled as art
Yes.
versus labeled as porn. And
Yes.
that's
Yes.
where it gets dangerous and that's where boundaries get pushed. And I think Sophia must run into that all the time,
Mhm.
just like all day long.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We live in a very religious society, very pious society.
Too pious.
Yeah. Dangerously pious.
Dangerously
Dangerously
pious.
pious.
Yeah.
As in the case of, workers that are arrested and often victimized for no good reason, when some of them are just doing their job,
Hmm.
and then it turns into a huge for them. And they use it to deport people, they use it to,
It's
it's
true.
xenophobic, racist, it's all of that bubbling over.
Overall, I loved this
Mm.
book. I thought it was a 5. It's
Mhm.
like, this is fantastic.
Same.
Yeah. Would
Yeah.
recommend
It
if
is
you
probably the best book I've read. Yeah.
the best book you've read. Oh, damn. Okay. Right.
Well, I mean, as far as like our art book club thing, I think this is the best one we've had so far.
It's quite good. It's definitely, if you're going to pick it
Mm.
up, it's definitely more academic. You're going to see lots of quotes. You're going to hear some tragic stories and some interesting stories. It's going to make you laugh. It's interesting and it's going to make you think. I really really would recommend this book also.
It'll definitely make you question some of the behaviors you have as far as like how you view people, even yourself. I think, to me, I think this is a necessary read. I think it just is a very good insight into humanity as a whole. How we treat each other, how we function around each other, how we commodify each other, how callous it can be sometimes. She has a boyfriend. She has a very long time boyfriend
Oh yeah.
that she is in a very committed relationship with, which is shocking to hear. I'm sure that the first time it didn't shock me, but I know it'll shock a lot of people to hear. Like, how can you have that kind of a relationship inside of this? And she's very transparent with her partner. Like, she talks with her partner all the time about, what has gone down at work, and they work through things together.
Hmm.
And their main thing is just be honest with me, like tell me, like that's all I ask, because it is a different relationship. She shows the differentiation between the affection for her partner and the affection she has for the people that she works for. So,
Absolutely. If you feel any resistance towards this book, reading about topics that make you feel uncomfortable will give you more empathy towards that topic. And that's
yeah.
mainly why I would recommend this book to most people. And it's nice to like have the art field with it as like relatability in so many other ways, at least for me. Yeah, it was great. It was
this
great.
book is like this book is like the talk but for artists.
It's like the talk about for artists. It's so good.
That's what I was going to say at the beginning. Like, So you guys know this is how the show's going to go. This
Uh-huh.
is like the talk you had with your parents.
Yeah.
If that makes you uncomfortable.
It's perfect. It's perfect. Highly
Oh,
recommend. All right.
yes.
You ready for the next book?
Yeah.
Excellent. So, the next
Okay.
book you will have 2 months to read, and we are going
Okay.
away from the theoretical and we're going back into the practical. We're just swinging back over, and I think it's going to be good. This book is called The Oil Painter's Color Handbook. This book, it's like a textbook. It's kind of heavy,
Yep.
and it's about color in every way you can
Mm-hmm.
think of. The author is Todd Casey, and he has quite a decent platform where he's doing lots of educational teaching online for artists. And this book
Mm-hmm.
just seemed really interesting. Like the back is really gorgeous, and I'm like, yeah, that's the kind of color theory I'm interested in. I'm like, I don't know what's going on here yet, but
Yeah.
I can't wait to know.
But I'm all in.
I'm ready. I'm ready. Teach me things, Casey. Let's go.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Yeah, it's got some color history, like color palette history. It goes into lighting, but not in like a scientific eyeball kind of way, but more like how artists deal with color and light and atmosphere and trades and illusions and stuff like that. So I think it's going to be great. I'm going to try and do a couple of the exercises that are in there if there are any, since we have 2 months to read it. But yeah,
Sure.
that's the book. Here, I'll make the book super
Okay.
large. You ready for this? We're just going to go like,
Oil Painter's
wee.
Color. I think I've
That's the
seen
book.
this before, but I've not. I may even have it, but I'm not sure. 'Cause I've gotten a bunch of books over time that people have recommended and like
Yeah.
downloaded them
Uh,
to read at my leisure.
At your leisure. At your leisure. So that's what we're reading next. We
Leisure.
meet next on here on Twitch in January on the second Sunday. I forgot what day that is. Let's take a guess. I bet it's the 12th. Let's see. I'm so good at this. Okay, yes, it's January 12th that we were meeting at 3 p.m.
You're
Pacific
so
time.
funny.
Tell me again. It's so good. Yeah. Jennifer, do you have anything coming up that you want to promote or chat about?
Promotion: if you would like a customized G-Shock, reach out to me on Visual Nomad .art or on my Instagram account at Visual Nomad _.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, just reach out to me. I've got a piece that I'm almost done with, and when I am, I'll make prints of that.
Ooh, heck yeah. Heck yeah. That's awesome. I'll put links to that in the show notes, y'all. And
How about you?
I have all of my original paintings up on my website right now for sale, which has not happened in a long time. So if you're interested, you should go check that out. I've also got some new prints coming up soon, and that's fun. So the store's open, is what I'm saying. You should go check it out on my website because I make
Yay.
paintings and prints and stuff. Also, I've made a calendar for next year, and it's zodiac
I saw
themed.
that.
Yeah, it's like
I need,
abstract.
I
It
need to
has the
get a calendar.
constellations.
I was just thinking last night that I need to get one of your calendars.
It's a wall calendar. You can write on it. It's super cute. Anyways,
Hmm.
I've made that and y'all can have one. And that's what I got going on. Quick note, Brushwork is going to be taking a hiatus in December. So you'll get this episode plus 2 more, and then we'll be taking a break and back in 2025. So, go listen to back episodes. It'll be great. Okay, I think that's it. I'll see you later, everyone. Goodbye. Toodles.